Here, please. Go here, please. So here, here. Please.
Okay. Closer. 唔該晒。OK， 呢度。
係。
唔該晒。Thank you。
各位記者朋友，大家好啦！咁歡迎大家咧今日出席我哋仲量聯行長者生活居所報告嘅記者發佈會。咁等我介紹一下咧你面前嘅兩位嘉賓，咁分別有仲量聯行評估諮詢服務部大灣區市場拓展總監同埋魏女士 Wendy。Present today are Ms. Wendy Chang, GBA Growth Director of Value and Risk Advisory at JLL Hong Kong, and Mr. Tom Parker, Institutional Clients Director of Value and Risk Advisory at JLL Hong Kong。仲量聯行評估諮詢服務部企業客戶董事 Tom Parker 先生。咁今日嘅發佈會咧，Wendy 同埋 Tom 咧會為大家分析一下本港未來長者生活居所咧所面對嘅挑戰，同埋咧介紹一下仲量聯行建議嘅方案，以及咧政府可以採取嘅措施。咁最後咧兩位嘉賓咧就會回答咁多位記者朋友嘅提問嘅。In our presentation today, Wendy and Tom will give a presentation on how tight of the future demand of elderly homes and also discuss JLL's suggestions to the market as well as the government. They will then take questions from the floor during the Q&A section. 咁今日嘅簡報會咧係以廣東話同埋英文進行嘅。Today's presentation will be conducted in Cantonese and English. 咁我哋而家事不宜遲，先有請 Wendy 咧為我哋介紹一下長者生活市場所面對嘅挑戰。Wendy，thank you。
好，唔該晒 Linda， 大家好啊。咁多謝大家嚟到呢度今日嘅記者招待會啦。咁 OK 啊。咁我會首先分享一下我哋今次嘅白皮書裏邊睇到嘅有兩個比較大嘅挑戰嘅喺呢個安老市場裏邊。首先第一個咧就係關於嗰個人口老化嘅問題。咁其實我哋都聽過哇，香港嘅人口老化問題好嚴重啊。咁其實有幾嚴重咧？咁其實我哋可以睇到根據一啲嘅統計中心嘅一啲研究咧，包括呢個 statistical 咧。咁其實佢話其實喺2050年咧，香港會成為全世界人口老化比例最高嘅一個地方。咁係講緊40% of 我哋嘅人口咧係會超過60歲嘅，係講緊320萬嘅一個人口數目。咁呢個係一個非常之嚴重嘅一個好似一個計時炸彈咁樣對我哋香港嚟講。咁另外就係另外一個數字想同大家分享嘅咧，其實就當我哋睇翻香港政府嘅一啲數據咧，就包括 census 啦，同埋我哋自己仲量聯行嘅一個研究嘅預測咧，咁其實人口嘅去到2032年咧，都會係一個好大嘅增長啦，會多咗50萬嘅老年人啦。咁但係其實喺個供應方面咧，如果我哋講一啲安老院舍咧，其實個增長幅度係非常之慢嘅。咁係講緊一個0.24% 嘅一個增長咯，咁係遠遠唔夠呢個供應可以 match 到個供應嘅。咁另外咧，我哋亦都想分享一下咧，其實喺我哋今次嘅白皮書裏邊咧，我哋除咗大家手上攞咗嗰份白皮書之外咧，我哋其實都用咗我哋一啲叫 GIS 啦，即係叫做呢個地理信息系統啦。咁同埋我哋自己有嘅一個 database 啦，我哋自己有個數據平台咧，都對呢個老年人嘅一個市場，香港老年人市場咧做咗一個好大嘅數據分析嘅。咁我哋睇到有啲乜嘢嘅現象咧？咁大家可以睇到，其實喺我哋嗰個數據平台裏邊睇到咧，其實有4個地區咧，包括元朗啦、包括東區啦、沙田啦同埋觀塘咧，都係相對嚟講喺個人口老化嘅個情況咧係比較嚴重嘅。咁同埋佢其實喺嚟緊到2032年嗰個增長咧，個幅度都係比較大嘅。咁另外我哋又可以睇到啦，咁其實喺我哋個數據分析裏邊咧，我哋除咗有18區佢哋嗰個安老院舍嘅一啲情況之外咧，另外我哋其實對於我哋個安老人口佢個分佈，包括佢嘅入息啦，包括佢哋嗰個居住狀況啦，同埋佢個婚姻狀況，其實我哋都做咗一系列嘅分析嘅。咁其中一啲數字可以同大家一齊分享咧，就例如話我頭先所講嘅其中一個地區觀塘，咁觀塘個人口老化現象係比較嚴重嘅。咁如果我哋從一個喺佢個收入嗰個層面去睇嘅話咧，其實佢係喺個中位數以下咧，係即係相對喺全香港個老年人嘅中位數以下嘅一個比例嘅。係啦，咁另外咧就係我哋呢個就係大家喺個 PPT 睇到嘅咧，其實就係所有香港所有安老院舍嘅一啲資訊啦，包括佢哋嘅電話聯絡啊，或者係佢哋一啲收費模式啊，呢啲其實我哋都會喺我哋個數據庫度睇到嘅。咁一個比較想同大家分享就係頭先講關於觀塘啦。咁觀塘我哋講緊話一個比較嚴重嘅地區咧，就係其實係講緊一個床位咧係有成41個老人家喺度去爭嘅，即係咁樣講。好，咁頭先就講咗關於香港嘅安老人即係老年人口嘅一個挑戰啦，一個問題啦，人口老化。咁但係其實另外一個現象咧，想同大家分享咧，就係其實大家有冇發現老人家其實而家個壽命咧係越嚟越長嘅。咁喺1971年到而家咧，其實我哋平均嚟講咧，男或者係女嘅老人家咧，都平均多咗10幾年嘅一個壽命嘅。咁所以其實去到2066年咧，我哋係講緊我哋嘅老人家係起碼平均係90歲嘅壽命咯。咁其實我哋個老人家嘅壽命長咗啦，咁另外其實我哋個老人家嘅經濟狀況咧，其實都好咗好多。咁另外一個調查同大家分享咧，就係一個私人銀行啦，花旗銀行，其實佢每一年都會對一啲我哋叫香港嘅千萬富翁啦，都會做啲調查嘅。其實我哋發現咧，平均嚟講咧，個千萬富翁嘅平均年齡咧，其實係60同埋61歲咯。其實所以其實好多老人家咧，其實佢係有呢個經濟能力，佢係有呢個條件可以揾一個更加好嘅安老住所嘅。咁另外啦，我哋都睇到咧，其實好似例如話香港大學，其實佢都會對一啲我哋叫做golden age 啦，即係一啲黃金年齡啊，嗰啲咁嘅翻譯啦，咁我自己都係啦，咁啊其實都有做過呢一方面嘅咁樣嘅一啲調查嘅。其實有成70%嘅呢一啲受訪者咧，佢哋都係好擔心，我想退咗休之後可以住邊度咧？我唔想去安老院喎，咁我有啲咩選擇咧？同埋佢就有80%，佢哋都係想話，我可唔可以有一個更加好嘅一個空間，可以更加參與到社區嘅活動啊咁樣。所以其實我哋睇到好多老人家，其實佢哋都有呢一方面嘅考慮，都會諗下我自己老咗之後，我點樣可以安居咧咁樣。咁我諗相信大家都會好知道，即係其實香港我哋講緊老年人嘅安居咧，其實而家最主要係2個大嘅種類啦嚇。一個就係我哋叫做居家安老啦，咁就係通常就係同屋企人一齊住。咁另外一種咧就係我哋叫做長者居啦，即係我哋叫做一啲安老院啦，香港安老院啦。咁主要就係呢2種嘅模式嘅。咁但係安老院因為其實最普遍嘅安老院咧，都係俾一啲比較基本嘅一啲照顧服務啦。咁但係好多時咧會喺個私隱上啊，或者係一啲照顧層面嗰度，可能俾到一啲如果佢有啲叫做自理能力嘅一啲長者咧，可能就會爭啲嘅。咁所以其實今次我哋嘅白皮書咧，我哋都係想介紹嘅一種俾長者可以居住嘅一種種類咧，我哋叫做樂齡居所。咁或者我將個時間交俾我同事阿 Tom 咧，去介紹下咩叫樂齡居所。
Thank you. So we've identified that Hong Kong has some major challenges to meet the upcoming silver tsunami. We know there's going to be a huge shortage of elderly care options going forward. But we can't just rely upon one option to try and solve that problem. At the moment, we've got the residential care homes for the elderly, and they perform a good job. but we need to look at other options as well so we can try and explore new ways in which we can try and take some of the burden off the government in order to try and meet some of these upcoming needs. And we believe that senior living is one of those options that can do that. So what exactly is senior living? And why is it different from the existing residential care homes for the elderly that we have in Hong Kong? So senior living evolved during the 1980s in the US, the UK and Australia, and it evolved to meet the changing needs of elderly people. Elderlies were saying, we don't want to go and live in a care home. Please don't ever send me into one of those care homes. So senior living was born to try and meet those needs and to try and provide a more luxurious and a more aspirational way of living for seniors. So I'll talk through some of the differences now, and then we can have a look at some of the major features of senior living that separate it from an elderly home. Firstly, the main differences for elderly homes and senior living are two very different products for two very different markets. Elderly homes are basic, affordable premises which provide nursing care to residents, but the facilities can quite often be dated and there's little in the way of privacy. In an elderly home, you'll normally pay a monthly rental, and in return you'll typically receive a bed in a dormitory, meals and care provided to you. Senior living, on the other hand, provides private apartments with flexible care options and access to a number of on-site medical and leisure facilities. And one word we keep coming back to with senior living is aspirational. It's intended to be an aspirational, something you look up to and aspire to living in. So now we'll highlight some of the main features of senior living that really set it apart, starting with community. Senior living recognises that as we grow older, we continue to feel the need to be active. We continue to seek companionship and seek a sense of community. And senior living intends to try and solve that by providing on-site leisure facilities, such as gyms, and areas where people can socialise and meet with other residents, such as lounges, restaurants and cafes. In the past, when we retired, we often sought to totally disassociate ourselves with the world of work. But the elderly demographic is changing, and increasingly we're seeing elderly people wishing to stay connected, wishing to continue to keep up correspondence, and senior living provides working spaces that will allow them to do so. And senior living also recognises that family remains crucially important. So the residences are designed to facilitate visits by family. They include children's play areas and provide opportunities for family bonding. Senior living residences also differentiate themselves in terms of their adoption of technology. Senior living can include features such as chilled ceilings. These provide very efficient cooling for the premises, and they're also highly efficient at purifying the air and providing a safe and hygienic environment for elderly people. They include smart sensors which can monitor the conditions in the apartment, making sure it's neither too warm nor too cold. They can also check on residents' vital signs, and you have companion-like butler robots which can detect falls and provide medication reminders. And having these sorts of features really helps to reassure the families of loved ones who may be moving into senior living that they're going to be moving into somewhere safe, somewhere where they're protected and looked after. In terms of medical care, senior living provides a huge amount of flexibility to ensure that residents receive the level of care that they actually need. So this can vary from independent living, where round-the-clock care and health monitoring is available on demand, through to housing with care, which can ultimately provide residents with specialist long-term care options, such as assisted living, memory care and rehabilitation services. But the key is that residents can choose as much or as little care as they need. Payment and operation models are also very different. So we do have a couple of early adopters of senior living in both Hong Kong and China. And one of the challenges that these facilities have faced is finding the right payment model. Now, the most commonly adopted model at the moment is a lease for life, whereby the resident will pay a one-off premium and then they'll be provided with a refund when they eventually exit the facility, depending on how long they were in that particular centre. But this is proving to be not popular in either Hong Kong or China. Generally, people want to continue to hold on to their own property and they want to continue to see capital appreciation. They don't like the idea of putting a large amount of money in something and then receiving a smaller sum back at the end. So other options can include debentures, monthly rental, or even private treaty sales. This is where elderly residents would be able to buy their own flats and then sell it back onto the market at a later date. So there are a few senior living developments in Hong Kong, but the key word here is few. So Jolly Place was built by the government in 2003, and since then we've seen 4 more government-led developments and 2 privately led developments. But if we look at all the developments that have taken place in Hong Kong, only Ventura Residences is truly akin to what we would consider to be a true senior living facility, the likes of which we see in other markets. So how does this sector perform? Well, we don't have a huge amount of data in Hong Kong and China, but we can have a look at markets elsewhere to see how the sector performs. Capital appreciation largely mirrors that of mainstream residential, but there is a disconnect when it comes to rentals. Senior living rents continue to see large amounts of growth, even during the COVID-19 pandemic, which disproportionately affected the elderly population. Rents continue to grow. Vacancy is very low in this sector as well, so that illustrates there is a large amount of demand. In the US, the UK and Australia, we see long waiting lists for places, and facilities are usually sold out or fully leased off plan. So in terms of occupier demand, senior living has performed well in most markets. And from an investment perspective, senior living can provide a better return for investors from residential. We had a look at the difference in return across a number of markets and found that on average, senior living delivered a return around 100 to 150 basis points higher than normal residential. This makes the sector exceptionally attractive to investors, particularly institutional investors. So it's no surprise to see that institutional investors are taking a larger share of the market each year along with private wealth. In Asia Pacific, this market and this sector remains relatively new. But you can see on the graph on the right-hand side that there is a very thin blue line appearing, which indicates investment in the senior living sector is starting to take place and starting to happen here. Now, in APAC, senior living investment accounts for less than 1% of the total investment market share. But in more developed markets, it accounts for closer to 5% of total investment activity. That indicates that there's potentially significant room for growth for this sector as an institutional-grade investment opportunity. And that presents a number of opportunities for us here in Hong Kong, because if we're able to encourage the development of this sector, we're able to take some of the burden off the government, we're able to take positive steps towards meeting the housing needs of our elderly population going forward. I think it's important that this is something that we consider and we encourage further in Hong Kong.
嚟緊咧，咁我哋再請翻 Wendy 咧，同我哋總結一下啦，同埋講下 JLL 對政府嘅啲建議。Thank you。
好啊，唔該晒 Linda。Thank you Tom。我諗我哋其實有4個重點啦。第一個就係頭先所講嘅，係一個計時炸彈啦，即係講緊220萬嘅老年人嘅一個人口啦。咁其實根據我哋仲量聯行嘅預測咧，係到2032年咧係會有6萬個呢個長者嘅長者居所係要 fill in 嘅，即係需要有呢個 gap 嘅。咁所以我哋需要更加多嘅供應咯。咁呢個第一點啦。咁第二點就係頭先所講嘅，其實我哋個老年人口咧，除咗我哋一個好龐大嘅老年人口之外咧，其實我哋嘅長者係更加長壽同埋佢更加有嗰個經濟能力。咁所以我哋希望喺個供應上邊咧係更加多元化，就唔係淨係一啲長者屋啦，或者係安老居家。其實可能會喺一個我哋頭先所講嘅樂齡居所呢一方面咧，都可以提供一個供應嘅。咁第三點就係我哋所講嘅樂齡居所，其實我哋都希望喺呢一個板塊咧係可以有更加多嘅投資者或者係一啲房地產商可以入去呢個市場嘅。咁唔係淨係香港嘅一啲房協啊嘅一啲項目咯，希望更加可以見到更加多嘅投資者同埋地產發展商可以入呢個市場。咁第4點就係啦，咁如果要入呢個市場，其實好多時我哋啲投資者都係要睇計唔計到數。咁而家我哋其實係好想見到其實政府咧係可以做得更加多，俾得更加多嘅一啲我哋叫做優惠啦，或者喺一啲政策上，喺一啲嘅條例上邊可以有一啲修改，令到我哋啲投資者可以入呢個市場咧，佢哋自己即係其實係一個 win-win 咯，又可以解決到個社會問題，另外佢哋自己又可以有一個投資回報。
唔該晒。咁我哋而家就係一個問答環節啦。咁2位嘉賓咧都可以同咁多位記者朋友進行交流嘅。咁如果大家係有提問嘅話，可以先舉手啦。咁我哋嘅同事咧就會將個咪遞俾你。咁或者我哋而家先邀請第一條問題。
你好，我有一个问题想问一下麦毅女士，就是您说这个会有6万 既然这个老人的居所是可能会缺失在未来，那这个会造成什么样的影响？您觉得在未来的话，然后这些老人他们最后可能会面临什么样的一个问题？
好，谢谢你的提问。那我用普通话来回答哈。
谢谢。
就是根据我们仲量联行的预算，就是我们到2030年是看到大概有6万个这样的一个缺口。那其实这个缺口我们看到，如果按照政府它的一个只是这个安老居所的这样的一个建设的一个进度的话，是远远追不上就是人口老化这个进度的，所以就会面临这个问题，就是有很多的老年人在香港，那他们可以有什么选择呢？就是他们就是在没有一个更好的一个，或者就是更安居，我们所说的就是安居的一个这样的一个情况，所以就是他们会去其他地方，或者去大湾区，或者去到其他的国家去有一个安老的环境，所以这个也是一个很大的一个就是社会的问题吧。我们要从这个安居这一方面，先要給到他們有這樣的一個條件。
好 ，Wendy， 咁唔該晒 SMB 阿 Ben。咁多位記者朋友，如果你提問之前，可以先講下你所屬嘅機構同埋你嘅名，唔該。睇下有冇下一條問題。
經濟日報 Tony， 我想問翻就係嗰個暫時發展，即係市場上如果私人市場咧發展呢一類嘅樂齡居所咧，嗰個即係可唔可以講下嗰個回報啊，或者點？即係而家個情況係點，同埋你話建議政府係有啲乜嘢嘅協助咧？例如
好，咁我回答先，多謝你嘅提問。咁其實我哋頭先分享咗咧，其實我主要嘅個市場嘅一個參與者咧就係房協啦。咁但係其實我哋講一啲私人嘅投資者，我哋最近期見到嘅就係喺跑馬地嘅 Venture 啦，咁同埋之前喺九龍城嘅一個叫做商場入邊嘅一個改建啦。咁其實都係非常之少，即係得1、2個案例，我哋睇到係有啲私人發展商喺呢一個市場裏邊去投資嘅。咁其實我哋都有同好多個發展商，包括華懋啊，我哋其實都會，因為佢哋其實最近都買咗呢個 Prime Care 啦，松齡集團啦。咁其實佢哋都有興趣喺呢一方面嘅市場去做發展嘅。咁但係嗰個投資回報咧，其實都係即係呢一樣嘢都係羊毛出自羊身上。咁你個地價或者你個成本各樣嘢，咁你點樣可以揾到買家去買咧？咁所以其實我哋覺得呢一個市場要發展落去咧，其實係需要政府希望可以做多一步咯。咁所謂嘅做多一步，其實都有好多方面嘅。咁因為我哋講緊個樂齡居所咧，其實係好多時係一個俾到長者嘅一啲體驗啦。所以其實嗰個空間感咧，其實係需要更加大。例如話個走廊要更加闊啦，又或者係喺嗰個居所入邊咧，其實係有一啲樂齡科技可以幫到，可以嚟話做到啲體測啊，可以有啲 sensor 啊，幫到個長者嘅居住嘅。咁呢啲其實都要投入嘅。咁所以呢一方面咧係我哋會見到係要即係政府會唔會喺一個地價方面會有啲優惠啦。即係如果係一啲公用嘅地方嘅話，如果係做一啲可能係復康嘅一啲服務嘅話，喺個居所度，咁呢啲可唔可以喺個嗰個地契係或者喺個減免個地價方面可以優惠。另外就係一啲資產，即係或者我哋一啲叫做一啲類型嘅改建啦。可能有一啲舊式嘅住宅或者酒店，如果我哋要改建做樂齡居所嘅話，咁會唔會喺一啲 pop ratio 都可以有一啲優惠俾到佢咧？就係一啲公用嘅地方會唔會可以減免咧？咁呢啲其實都係有唔同方面，即係政府都可以做好多方面呢一方面嘅一啲調整咯，去吸引一啲嘅投資者同埋房地產商入呢個市場咯。
有請下一條提問。
你好啊 TVB 嘅，頭先聽到咧就話其實預計咧未來10年咧有220萬個長者啦。想請問咧，其實可以比較個安老院舍收費方面啦，呢個樂齡房屋其實嗰個收費係點樣咧？會唔會高好多咧？其實頭先都聽到你講話有唔少嘅長者啦，即係話有61歲嘅長者千萬款都比較多嘅。咁其實嗰220萬嘅長者 有幾多成嘅長者係有呢千萬嘅資產咧，可以支付到呢方面咧？唔該。
好，唔該晒你嘅問題。其實而家咧香港其實唔係因為有太多嘅案例，或者我分享一下，好似例如話房協咁樣，佢一個就係個 lease for life 嘅一個 model 啦。咁其實佢for一個長者，如果佢要住入去咧，其實佢要俾一個我哋叫做前期嘅費用啦，講緊係200萬嘅一個費用啦。跟住每一個月咧要俾一個服務費嘅。咁呢個係一個收費模式。咁但係我哋都見到，例如話而家新嘅跑馬地個 venture 個 project 咧，佢就用債券嘅形式嘅。咁呢個就係一個比較貴嘅一個門檻咯，即係講緊係我嗰陣時問過都係幾百萬去到2000萬嘅一個水平咯。咁所以其實而家大家都喺度試緊水，即係究竟邊一隻係比較適合啲俾一啲長者去即係佢哋願意啲接受，或者甚至唔係一啲長者係長者嘅子女，即係佢屋企願唔願意去俾呢一咁嘅錢去俾佢嘅老人家可以去住咧咁樣。咁所以其實我哋都希望可以更加多元化咯，即係如果你有更加多嘅一啲地產發展商或者投資者入嚟咧，咁我哋應該會見到有更加多嘅一啲經營模式咯。咁另外頭先講話其實喺我哋嘅分析裏邊咧，就未有呢啲數據去即係睇到究竟嗰啲老年人口，即係嗰220萬，其實有幾多個可以願意俾到幾多咧？咁呢個就未有呢一方面嘅數據。
頭先 presentation 應該講嗰個回報其實應該係比投資住宅項目係要高㗎嘛。咁 so far 見到即係呢方喺 senior living 嗰個投資都咁低咧，其實最大嗰個阻力，即係對發展商投資者嚟講係最大係咩原因？另外我見你哋報告有提到大灣區，但係頭先好似 presentation 比較冇咩 touch on。咁想問其實如果真係即係回報或者各種因素嚟講，其實係建議投資者係投資香港啊，定係大灣區係 for 其實講香港嘅需要咧？
嗰個回報嗰度，或者我等阿 Tom 可唔可以解釋一下
？So Claire was asking about the return on investment. Which one is if it's not higher than other industrial properties, then what is the motivation for the property developer to actually work on this project?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for the question. At the moment, with returns generally for most asset classes below interest rates, it's a challenging market for investors overall. So most institutional investors certainly are looking at alternatives at the moment. So alternatives can cover things such as alternative industrial, which is data centres, logistics, cold storage, mini storage, and also a popular one is alternative living facilities and sectors. So that's co-living, student accommodation and senior living. The attraction of senior living and the living sector as a whole is generally it's slightly more stable than perhaps the commercial sector. You don't have as long a void periods. The properties generally aren't as expensive, so it's easier for investors to get into. And it's usually a shorter period to find new tenants. So it's seen as a more stable investment class, which is why returns for residential typically in most markets are lower than they are for commercial. So this is still a residential style return. It's around, for Hong Kong I estimate, it would be around 3.5% a year. But for Hong Kong residential at the moment, you might get a return of 2.5% per annum initially. So 3.5 versus 2.5, I think it's certainly attractive. Now you might be able to get more for other commercial sectors in Hong Kong, but at the same time you trade off the added risk with the uncertainty over those sectors versus the living sector.
Actually, my question was if senior living is more attractive than the other sector, why have we seen so little investment in this sector? What are the main obstacles?
The main hurdle at the moment in Hong Kong is there's a high barrier to entry. So land prices are exceptionally high, and at the moment if you're a senior living developer, you want to build senior living in Hong Kong, you have to compete with residential developers for land. Now Hong Kong is one of the only markets or developed markets where we have that sort of arrangement at the moment. So in other markets such as the UK, senior living has its own planning use. So land will be available only for that particular planning use. So that means developers bidding for it will all be looking to use it for senior living. So you won't have a residential developer coming in who can pay more. So because of the issues with land entry prices at the moment, we're not seeing as much development in that sector as we need. So one of the things we identified in the paper that we would recommend the Hong Kong government certainly look at would be looking at how they can encourage developers to enter that sector. And one of the solutions may be to release land for sale specifically for elderly living use.
咁我回答翻，唔好意思，我回答翻個關於 GBA 嗰個投資啦。咁其實因為其實喺國內咧，同香港咧，其實成個玩法或者即係成個ecosystem 我哋都好唔同。咁我哋見喺國內咧，其實好多時咧，其實係一啲保險公司咧，反而係喺呢個養老地產呢一個市場入邊嘅。咁好多時佢哋會同佢哋一啲金融資產啊會掛鈎嘅。咁另外就係有一啲我哋叫做會員咯，即係可能我提早我想買定個位，咁跟住我就去供款咁樣。咁到時到你老咗啦，你就有呢個位可以去揀，即係可能呢個保險公司嘅唔同嘅一啲養老地產物業咁樣。咁所以其實係好多即係同香港嗰個成個環境係有啲唔同咯。所以香港嘅一啲投資者或者香港嘅房地產商，我哋都會睇咁香港可能你會熟啲咯，即係你喺呢個市場你會比較熟悉啲，咁你要知道可以點樣去參與多啲咯，咁係啊。
你好，香港電台 Kevin， 我想問一問咧，其實最主要嗰一種即係收費嘅模式係咪都係承租為主？有冇話買賣嘅？即係都可能係有。同埋如果喺個買賣度咧，因為其實始終即係樓價喺香港係一樣好敏感嘅議題啦。其實喺嗰個轉讓嗰個過程入面，會唔會其實都可能需要一啲限制嚟到令到即係要平衡翻嗰個政策咧？
係。關於其實我哋都未睇到香港有呢一樣嘢嘅買賣嘅模式咯，即係頭先所講嘅，即係好似房協嗰啲，其實都係一個 lease for life， 即係好似叫做逆按揭咁樣啦。其實你係一到走咗，其實你都係要俾翻俾房協咁樣，所以其實都未有呢一種模式嘅出現咯。咁或者我睇下 Tom 有冇補充喺呢一方面。So about the payment model, so we cannot see any sales model here in Hong Kong. Basically, it's more the lease for life model.
Actually, I think the sales model would possibly be one of the optimum models to employ because it meets a lot of the requirements that people would set forth. So nobody in Hong Kong, home ownership is an important thing. People like to own their own home and they like to have something that they can pass on to future generations as well. The private treaty sales model would allow them to buy their own apartment, so they could own that, and then they'd be able to dispose of it as well. It wouldn't be an open market. The disposal would be limited to other people who meet certain criteria, potentially age 60 plus, or some other criteria set out by the developer and probably with the planning at the time as well. But I think that would possibly be one of the optimum models. It would be very similar to the model adopted at the moment for new residential flats as well. I think it gives people greater comfort that they're holding on to an asset which hopefully would appreciate in value over time and something that would enable them to pass on some form of equity as well to future generations.
Thank you. I got a question to Mr. Parker. You just said for the investors, we probably can get more 1 to 1.5% more revenues than the normal residential. Do we have any examples in Hong Kong's senior living investment or in GBA, and how much more money they actually make?
No, at the moment, no. Unfortunately, we don't have any examples. So what we've done to draw that conclusion is we've looked at other markets. So we took a lot of data, particularly from North America, Europe, Australia. We also had a look at Japan, because Japan's starting to have more of an emerging senior living market as well. So we looked at the typical yield spread between residential and senior living, and that's how we drew that conclusion. But unfortunately, no data for Hong Kong at the moment.
Thank you. 睇下記者朋友仲有冇其他提問？
TVB 嘅想問多條 Q 啦，即係話頭先聽到講話，而家香港咧有4個區嘅老人家啦比較多啲，可唔可以重新再 detail 講下？譬如觀塘區啦，係幾多個人爭一個位，跟住元朗咧又係個情況係點樣咧？
好其實觀塘區嗰個咧係講緊41個老人家爭1個床位咯。咁另外嗰3個區咧，我之後補翻俾你，係咪啊？係。
不好意思，我还想问温迪一个follow up，就是您刚才说就是可能会有香港的居民前往大湾区或者是出国去养老，那这个对于香港本地的这个社会是有一个怎样的比较负面的影响？然后还有就是香港的老龄居民他们前往大湾区的居住的意愿是有很强吗？谢谢。
就是香港去大湾区，就是香港老人家去大湾区养老，其实这个一直是从以前的行政长官其实一直都是在推的，就是希望可以有更多的政策优惠，包括跟广东省那边的一些合作啊，然后希望鼓励香港的长者可以去那边居住。那但是有很多的配套方面，比如说医疗券，比如说就是那些长者在香港的那些居住的那个房子，那是不是就要归还呢？尤其是那些公共房子，所以这些都是要去解决的一个问题。就是如果我们希望，就是政府希望鼓励更多的香港长者去国内就是大湾区去居住那刚刚所说的就是去其他的地方去居住这个问题，其实就我自己家里也有老人家，就是他们其实还是我们中国人还是就是有这个家庭的这个观念还是非常重的，还是希望就是家人就是在自己身边，虽然不能住在一起，但是也是有一个我们说是一碗汤的一个距离，就是拿那碗汤过去还暖的那种感觉。所以其实我们是希望可以就是在原居地，就是家庭就是家人旁边可以有合适他們居住的一個地方，一個選擇。
唔該晒。記者朋友仲有冇其他嘅問題？如果冇嘅話咧，咁我哋今日嘅新聞發佈會就到此結束啦。咁多謝咁多位記者朋友出席啦。如果你哋之後仲有其他關於呢個 topic 嘅提問咧，都可以隨時同我哋聯絡嘅。Thank you so much for your time. If you have other questions after this press conference, please feel free to reach out to us. Thank you both.
唔該晒。
Thank you.
Thank you. 唔該晒大家，多謝大家。